Urgently, the Russian Federation has fallen to its knees. Gerasimov has seriously set Putin up. The general is hanging by a thread. The military command has shifted into reverse. A stab in the back. China and the US are dismantling the Russian Federation. The power of two. Nuclear weapons are aimed directly at the dictator. One more word and there will be an explosion. Finland is ready to instantly shatter Russian grandeur. The army is on standby. The mobilization of Europe's forces is a shock. The Balkans have taken off their mask. For Moscow, this was a cold shower. An urgent order to draft everyone into the army. Putin's army has never faced such shame before. All this and more in our episode Hell Point, a sensation. The Kremlin is in turmoil like never before. There's a real storm in Moscow. Gerasimov is hanging by a thread and Putin is exploding with rage behind closed doors. Generals are fleeing en masse, burning documents and secretly removing classified archives. An atmosphere of fear and betrayal right inside the Kremlin offices. Rumor has it the dictator is already looking for a new scapegoat to pin the failure on. But while the Kremlin devours itself, the army is falling apart at the seams. Russian might has turned out to be a myth. Will Moscow survive its own storm? You'll find out in just a moment.
The last leg of Valery Gerasimov's chair has finally broken. The movement reports that the Kremlin is extremely dissatisfied with the general's work and, to put it mildly, his untruthful reports from the front. And the unremarkable and charisma-lacking Valery Gerasimov is the man to whom Putin owes his first presidential term. It was he who, while Moscow was preparing to check boxes on ballots, commanded the combat operations for the village of Komsomolskoye. This battle, which lasted 15 days, became the key and final one in the Russian Second Chechen campaign. Gerasimov delivered victory to candidate Putin, marching over the numerous corpses of Russian army soldiers and local residents.
The residents were allowed to leave the village. Well, they weren't allowed to get very far. They were forced to stay for several days on the outskirts of the village, but in reality, they served as a human shield.
In 2012, it was Gerasimov who presented the formula for hybrid warfare to the Ukrainian leadership. At that time, he insisted that it was necessary to move away from classical wars toward destabilization on the ground.
According to Putin, this means actively using protest potential.
A little later, the Gerasimov formula was first tested by the Russians in Crimea and then in Donbass. According to Bellingcat investigators, in 2014, Valery Gerasimov was the initiator of sending regular Russian troops to Ukraine's Ilovaisk and transferring Russian military equipment to the separatists, from which, among other things, the Malaysian Boeing was shot down. Mute Gerasim, as this grey cardinal of the general staff is called among themselves, has outlasted all his flamboyant and loud critics.
Those who don't give us the essential ammunition and support we need will be eating it bit by bit in hell. We currently have a severe 70% shortage of ammunition supplies. Shoigu, Gerasimov, can you tell us where exactly is the ammunition? We urgently need to know the location of the ammunition.
Prigozhin was blown up. Strelkov Gherkin is dying behind bars. After the scandal, it was precisely through his efforts. Valery Gerasimov was sent there, as was the favorite of Russian Z patriots, General Popov. Even after he was removed from the Ministry of Defense, Mute Gerasim still sits in his chair. Although rumors about his dismissal have been actively circulating since last summer. And now supposedly they really do have some basis. If Gerasimov fails to capture Pokrovsk, he will be replaced by a certain Viktor Viktorovich Poznikir by mid-November, who was born and raised near the Ukrainian city of Sumy. Not much is known about him. He was secretly awarded the Order of Zhukov, and in February,
In the year 2024, he was promoted to the distinguished rank of Colonel General, marking a significant advancement in his military career and reflecting the recognition of his leadership and service. During this time, important developments took place in the historic cities of Palmyra and Aleppo, both of which have played crucial roles in recent military operations, and have been at the center of strategic efforts in the region. Poznicki also addressed the ongoing work of the Russian military police stationed throughout the Middle East, highlighting their responsibilities in maintaining order, supporting local authorities, and ensuring the safety and security of civilians in areas affected by conflict and instability. In his remarks, he openly criticized the continued presence of American military forces in the region, expressing concerns that their involvement complicates efforts to achieve peace and stability. However, what drew even greater attention was the Lieutenant General's statement regarding the United States' plans to develop a global missile defense system, a move he suggested could have significant implications for international security and the balance of power worldwide. At the Moscow Conference on International Security, Poznicki called Washington a likely adversary of Moscow. To overcome missile defense, Viktor Viktorovich proposed using the Sarmat and Avangard systems.
It is still unknown whether Gerasimov will be able to outsmart his adversaries again and hold on. Since the summer, the occupiers have been amassing troops in the Pokrovsk direction and probing for weak spots in the Ukrainian defenses. On their side are Russia's vast resources, which they spare no expense to achieve their goals, and a large number of fortune seekers who have been lured by contracts and the prospect of a new hero status. And in 2025, Pokrovsk could become an important and decisive battle, much like the Chechen village of Komsomolskoye once was. The world is frozen in tension, a historic turning point. China, which just yesterday was cautiously keeping its distance, is now playing a completely different game. Beijing is demonstratively turning away from the Kremlin and extending a hand to you. Xi Jinping and Trump on the same side? Unthinkable, but a fact. All the signals point to it. The old alliance with Moscow is falling apart at the seams, while the US is applying unprecedented pressure. The geopolitical chessboard has been overturned, and the consequences could be enormous. What lies behind this alliance, and why is the Kremlin in a panic? More in the story ahead.
A truce or the calm before the storm? China has announced the suspension of an additional 24% tariff on American goods. The easing will last for a year. At the same time, the basic 10% tariff, which was introduced in response to a similar tariff by Trump announced in April, remains in place.
The US is the largest goods market and China is the largest goods producer. How does China make money? By supplying its products to the largest markets. And as we believe, the US is the primary one.
The decision to update the agreements was made after a meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. Reuters reports. Thanks to this, tariffs of up to 15% were also lifted on certain types of agricultural products from the US.
From an economic standpoint, China and the US cannot be, let's say, not just in different camps, but even be adversaries. In fact, they are in different camps because they are competing over who is the leading economy.
China's Ministry of Finance noted that they are suspending all tariffs imposed on March 4th on soybeans and other U.S. agricultural products, including corn, wheat, sorghum, and chicken. It was stated that the decision was made in accordance with the consensus reached during economic and trade consultations between
China in particular, and specifically the United States of America, commonly known as the USA.
The US and China have also agreed to establish direct communication between their armed forces. As stated by Pentagon Chief Pithx, this will help prevent potential conflicts between the countries. Another step China has taken towards the US is its refusal to import Russian oil. According to Bloomberg, major companies and small private enterprises in China have canceled nearly half of their oil shipments from Russia after the US imposed sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil in October. And
when the question arises of whom China will choose, Russia or the USA, one must understand a simple thing. There is the USA and one state, the largest is California. And California's economy is twice the size of Russia's economy, just one state. The USA in America is like two economies of the Russian Federation. Of course, for China, the USA is much more important than Russia.
Putin absolutely does not want to let go of one of his few remaining partners, so he sent his prime minister to Beijing with greetings. As a result of the negotiations, the parties signed about 10 documents on cooperation in the fields of energy, space, and high
technologies are the various tools, devices, and systems that people create and use to solve problems, make tasks easier, and improve the quality of life. They include everything from simple inventions like the wheel to complex digital networks and computers. Technologies have a significant impact on how we live, work, and communicate every day. And from America, interestingly, the territory has been shot down.
According to the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service, Russia is sinking ever deeper into economic dependence on China. Raw material projects in the Far East and Siberia are turning the region into a resource base for China, while local communities are left out of the promised benefits. The Russian Burevestnik and Poseidon did this urgently. The US responded by acquiring nuclear weapons. Trump gave them to the team. The knife game has begun. Putin made the first move to intimidate Washington, but he miscalculated. Right now, America is in the lead, while Russia remains on the other side of the barricades, where Trump's anger knows no bounds. The countdown has begun. What could be the outcome of the nuclear standoff between the US and Russia? We'll find out in just a moment.
The doomsday clock is approaching midnight. After Putin refused to accept Trump's terms regarding ending the war in Ukraine, Russia and the US began brandishing their nuclear clubs. In the White House and the Kremlin, they have started considering conducting nuclear
Tests are assessments used to measure knowledge, skills, or understanding in a specific subject or area. The Russian Federation is trying to use the issue in Ukraine in possible nuclear attempts as the last argument of kings at the moment of implementing their own plans to end the war.
During a meeting between Putin and the Russian Security Council, Defense Minister Andrei Belousov proposed to the dictator to prepare for full-scale nuclear tests, calling it a response to the actions of the United States.
At the end of this year, the United States plans to adopt a new medium-range missile system called Dark Owl, with hypersonic missiles that have a range of 5,500 kilometers. And in the future, the deployment of this system is planned in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region. The flight time of such a missile from the territory of Germany, where this missile system is planned to be deployed, to targets in the central part of Russia, is about 6 to 7 minutes.
In reality, it was Putin who first set the wheels of nuclear escalation in motion, and his henchmen.
You could go bowing respectfully to our Supreme Commander-in-Chief just so they would actually use this army.
Statements by the US President about possible nuclear tests as well as the launch of the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile were a response to threats from the Burevestnik and Poseidon.
Russia is conducting tests, China is conducting tests, but they don't talk about it. You know, we are an open society, we are different. We have to talk about it, otherwise you'll write about it yourselves. They don't have journalists who would write about it. We will conduct tests.
Nuclear tests are a serious step. Officially, the superpowers have not conducted them for over 30 years. Moscow last tested its atom in 1990, the US in 1992. The key document on the issue of mutual deterrence between the two nuclear superpowers is the bilateral treaty between the Russian Federation and the US, New START, START 3. On the mutual reduction and monitoring of nuclear arsenals, the document is valid until February 2026. But in 2023, the occupying country unilaterally suspended the treaty. Today, when it comes to nuclear issues, China has the greatest influence on Russia.
And I remember it was precisely the reaction of official Beijing that ultimately put an end to it. In the attempts by the Russian Federation to destabilize the international arena at the moment when the possible use of tactical nuclear weapons against the territory of Ukraine was being considered.
It is no coincidence that after meeting with Xi Jinping in South Korea, Donald Trump announced work on a denuclearization plan involving the US, Russia, and China. According to experts, if Moscow does not abandon its nuclear rhetoric in the near future, in addition to the Americans, the Chinese will also begin to put pressure on the Russian authorities.
In addition to the responsible military pressure from the United States on the Russian Federation and their pointed responses, we should also expect accordingly diplomatic efforts from official Beijing.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Urgent alert. The north is tense with anxiety as Finland deploys 15,000 troops to the border with Russia, preparing for large-scale exercises. Panic grips Moscow. Officials have turned pale, regions are frantically forming people's militias, and Kremlin generals avoid Putin's gaze. The dictator's confidence is fading along with the last remnants of control over the situation. Has the moment finally come when fear returns to where it all began? All the details right now. Acting proactively, Finland is deploying 15,000 troops to the border with Russia. The Finns are preparing for the largest series of military exercises this year. Conscripts, reservists, professional soldiers, as well as units from allied countries Sweden and the United Kingdom will take part in them. As reported by the country's ground forces, the purpose of the maneuvers is to test the army's readiness to defend the state and to strengthen cooperation with NATO allies.
An aggressive move by the occupying country on the territory of the occupying country, very close to the borders of Finland. There is currently intensive engineering construction of new military bases for the occupying country's army. This concerns Petrozavodsk, Kandalaksha, and other settlements on the territory of the Russian Federation, which indicate the redeployment of units of the Russian army. One of the
largest episodes will be the Lively Sentry exercise, which will take place in southern Finland from November 27th to December 4th. Almost.
Approximately 7,000 in total. Participants will be actively involved in the process. With this, accordingly, comes the so-called neutral status. That is to say that after the occupation of Finnish lands, friendly and good neighborly relations were established has absolutely no basis. The Russian military presence near Finland's borders has been constantly increasing.
In the spring of 2023, Finland became a member of the North Atlantic Alliance. This provoked a sharp reaction from Russia, worsening bilateral relations. In addition, Finland imposed sanctions against Russia and refused to grant asylum to Russians fleeing mobilization. After that, Putin's lackeys started blaming the Finns for every sin at every opportunity. For example, in September, former alcoholic president Dmitry Medvedev decided that Finland was preparing to attack Russia. After joining NATO under the guise of defensive measures, Helsinki is pursuing a confrontational course, preparing for war with Russia, apparently setting up a springboard for an attack on us. Moreover, according to him, Russia allegedly by law deserves reparations from the Finns for World War II. Supposedly, at the time, they paid too little thanks to the goodwill.
This pertains to the Russian people, their actions or their influence, specifically highlighting the involvement or perspective of those who are from Russia.
Following the alcoholic Medvedev, the head of the State Duma Defense Committee, Andrei Kartapolov, also made aggressive statements. He stated, or rather threatened, that Russia is ready to defend itself at any moment. They have everything they need. Medvedev had previously said the same thing.
We cannot simply ignore the important fact that Finland is currently a member of the North Atlantic Alliance. This development in turn entails certain changes to our military approaches and strategies as well. The fortification of the border and the repulsion of possible unfriendly acts.
The political and military leaders of Finland are doing everything they can to emphasize that an attack by Russia would be an act of suicidal madness.
The Russian Federation is demonstrating its readiness for a direct confrontation with the NATO bloc, and accordingly the first country that will be in the spotlight for the armies of the occupying country, that would be Finland and the Baltic states. That's why the risks are high. This is also evidenced by the formation of new military units in the Leningrad military district and accordingly the deployment of military infrastructure directly near the borders with Finland.
Earlier, it was reported that Finland had offered NATO to establish a new military base on its territory. Helsinki, which could become a base for large NATO reconnaissance drones. An incredible turn of events. The Balkans are waking up, and this time they're on Ukraine's side. Columns of equipment are moving out from Zagreb and Kosovo. Phenomenal generosity. Greece is preparing to send its fighter jets. A new era of support is on the horizon. The Ukrainian sky will receive powerful reinforcements capable of turning the tide of the war. From the Balkan Peninsula to the Ukrainian front, there is one unified signal. It's time to act. All the most important details about this and more are coming up in the story in just a moment.
Recently, Ukraine received a new significant package of military aid from Croatia. Ukraine and Croatia have also agreed on joint weapons production. Ukraine's Minister of Defense Denis Shmyhal and Croatia's Minister of Defense Ivan Anušić signed a joint letter of intent to deepen defense industrial cooperation.
He thanked Croatia for providing 13 military aid packages worth over 200 million euros. We expect the 14th aid package soon and the 15th by the end of this year. During the meeting, we also discussed joint participation in the SAFE mechanism and the possibility of Croatia joining the Pearl Initiative. We are grateful for the consideration of this matter, Denis Shmyhal, Minister of Defense of Ukraine.
Already at the beginning of next year, they will hold a joint industrial forum of defense product manufacturers. Croatia's greatest interest, of course, is in the production of various drones, which have already revolutionized modern warfare. The Croatian side will also assist Ukraine with demining efforts.
He noted Croatia's role in the demining coalition. The experience of this friendly country is important for clearing our land. The Croatian company Docking has already delivered 69 demining machines and has started producing spare parts in Ukraine. Denis Shmyhal, Minister of Defense of Ukraine.
Greece will soon deliver American-made M110A2 howitzers to Ukraine. 150,000 units of ammunition and Zuni rockets, or military aid with a total value of about 199 million euros will be transferred to Ukraine through the Czech Republic. Also, under pressure from other NATO countries, Greece may sell part of its Mirage 2000 fighter jets.
Greece has already purchased 24 more modern Rafale fighter jets from France. And considering that technical support for the 2005 fighter jets will end in 2027, it is looking to get rid of the old ones. However, negotiations with India regarding the sale of these fighter jets have reached a dead end. Other Balkan countries have also not found any interested buyers. Greece is negotiating with France to purchase another 6 to 12 Rafale fighter jets. And it is seeking a price reduction in exchange for selling part of the Mirage 2000 fleet.
Now, the Greeks are currently negotiating with France to acquire through purchase an additional 6 or possibly even 12 Rafale jets in addition to their current fleet. They are seeking a lower price in exchange for selling part of their Mirage 2000 fleet. Currently, Greece has 25 such aircraft in service. The United States is putting pressure on the country to acquire more weapon systems as part of the priority list of needs for Ukraine. Therefore, it is only a matter of time before Kiev purchases part of the Mirage 2000 fleet from Athens. Even the partially recognized Republic of Kosovo is helping Ukraine. Pristina has announced the delivery of a new military aid package to Ukraine. The Balkan country is ready to help as much as it can. The details of the aid are not being disclosed. It is known that it includes mortar shells of various calibers, including 120mm, 60mm, and 81mm, military trucks, armored vehicles, and tactical vehicles.
We are determined to support Ukraine in every aspect according to our capabilities, conditions and possibilities. Ejub Makedonci, Minister of Defense of Kosovo.
The Minister of Defense of Kosovo posted a video on social media showing the Kosovo security forces and the British Army training Ukrainian soldiers. Eastern European countries and the Balkans are actively assisting Ukraine with various types of weaponry and by conducting training on their own territory. Such support perfectly demonstrates their attitude toward the Russian world and Putin.
Russia is intensifying its strikes on Ukraine's energy system and changing its attack tactics. Moscow is launching hundreds of drones capable of bypassing air defense systems and equipped with cameras for improved targeting.
Russia has turned its strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure into a systematic operation aimed not just at temporarily damaging the grid, but at destroying the viability of large areas of the country ahead of winter. The goal of the attacks: to deprive regions of heat and electricity, undermine industry, provoke mass emigration, and create political pressure on Kyiv, writes The Economist.
Under these conditions, air defense becomes critically important, but this year Western partners are acting proactively, strengthening Ukraine's skies and energy system before the onset of cold weather. We
are not just now starting preparations for this winter season. We began preparing back at the end of the last winter season.
Already in November, the UK will begin mass production of the Ukrainian Octopus air defense drones, a joint project between Kyiv and London, designed for the rapid protection of the skies from enemy drones and missiles.
Our Ukrainian friends will share their technologies and intellectual property with the United Kingdom, and we, in turn, will do the same. We will continue to develop them further and produce them on a large scale so that thousands of interceptor drones can be supplied to Ukraine every month, said Elkanes, the Deputy Secretary of State for the Armed Forces in the UK Parliament.
These drones will become part of a system called the Air Defense Shield. It will integrate Western air defense systems such as Patriot, IRIS-T, NASAMS, as well as new mobile units that Germany and other allies will provide to Ukraine before the start of winter. The first drones will be tested by Ukrainian military personnel. And if the tests are successful, production will be expanded and some of the drones will likely be manufactured directly in Ukraine. At the same time, the UK government is expanding its multi-purpose missile production program. It is planned to deliver 5,000 units of this weapon to Ukraine to strengthen air defense.
We are also announcing an expansion of the production program in the United Kingdom to provide Ukraine with 5,000 new multi-purpose missiles. This will create new jobs in Belfast and other cities, as well as strengthen Ukraine's air defense for the coming winter.
At the same time, European allies are increasing their support for Ukraine's energy sector. Germany and other NATO countries are mobilizing resources, from air defense missiles to assistance for the energy sector, so that Ukraine can withstand the winter and counterattacks on critical infrastructure.
Germany has already paid 390 million euros. We agreed on another 30 million in the summer, but today I want to announce that we will invest an additional 30 million. In this way, we are providing 450 million euros. This money will make it possible to purchase the necessary technical equipment to save Ukraine.
In addition, the EU is preparing a winter support package for Ukraine. To the already provided 3 billion euros, a new guarantee of 800 million has been added for the emergency purchase of gas. This was reported by the EU ambassador to Ukraine, Katarina Maternova. The aid covers the repair of power grids and the supply of generators and transformers.
We have also provided and continue to provide significant assistance in the energy sector. Not only with generators for people and businesses, but also with transformer and compressor stations to help restore power grids, gas distribution networks, and compressors that supply gas and storage facilities which have been distributed. We are also providing financial support to state enterprises and major energy companies for the repair of their equipment. We are also supplying more than 2 gigawatts of electricity per day.
Thus, support for Ukraine this winter is reaching a new level, from modern air defense systems to resilient energy supply. And whatever the Kremlin may plan, Ukraine, together with its allies, aims not just for tactical success, but for strategic success, to withstand the cold, preserve strength, and maintain the ability to defend itself.
Everyone to the front. Putin took a step that revealed something. The world's second largest army has been worn down. A large-scale mobilization is being implemented in Russia at this very moment. They've run out of soldiers. The dictator is demanding a new batch of cannon fodder. The Russians themselves aren't too eager to go to their deaths. The Kremlin is nervous. Nothing is going according to plan. There's an urgent need for volunteers to guard the oil refinery. Russia is falling apart. Don't miss all the details coming up next.
The conveyor belt of cannon fodder. Putin has signed a law for year-round conscription into the Russian army.
We feel confident, secure and stable, and despite experiencing certain inevitable losses, which of course will naturally be associated with many thorough and detailed inspections, our outlook remains positive.
The new law allows military enlistment officers to operate without breaks, and dodging service will become even harder.
Behind us, definitely.
He will be behind us.
But this optimistic mood will soon leave these heroes.
Never go to the special military operation. You'll get caught.
The number of people we've lost is just... And
we'll lose even more because Putin is doing everything to make that happen. According to the new procedure, recruitment into the army will take place throughout the entire year from January 1st to December 31st. And not only during... According to the new rules, summons can now be posted in the state electronic register. And the deadline for reporting to the military enlistment office must not exceed 30 days from the moment of publication.
This section covers the details of the notification, which is an official message or alert sent to inform you about important updates or actions that may require your attention. During the so-called first wave of partial mobilization, more than 1.5 million citizens left the territory of the Russian Federation, according to estimates by the Russian side itself.
At the same time, Putin signed another law that allows reservists to be involved in guarding critically important infrastructure facilities. Russian media note that this is about strengthening control over military and energy structures.
Apparently, this is precisely about the covert nature of the mobilization. That is, under the guise of involving reservists, those citizens of the Russian Federation who are in the so-called combat reserve and have signed the relevant documents with the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. Apparently, they will be sent directly to the front line of combat. And strategic sites will be defended right on the front line.
To put it simply, Putin's new rules essentially legalize year-round raids and constant pressure on conscripts. And while the Kremlin dictator makes decisions from his cozy office and tells stories about how Russians are voluntarily lining up to go fight.
Our guys are going voluntarily, they're coming on their own, and we're getting 50, 60 at a time. Thousands a month come on their own, guys.
At the front, Russian soldiers cursed the day. Some were lured by money but ended up with nothing. Others were simply deceived and thrown in as cannon fodder.
My head got straight real quick. It only took me about 3 to 4 months to fully grasp the reality of the situation. I'd rather get caught and go to prison.
Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the aggressor country Russia has lost about
In the month of November, they mobilized a total of 353,000 troops in their military operations. In other words, the losses suffered by the Russian army significantly and far exceed their current ability to replenish and restore their personnel numbers through recruitment or other means. So, the issue of replenishing personnel through volunteers, even with financial incentives, and most of these volunteers are residents of the depressed regions of the Russian Federation, does not solve the problem of replenishing their ranks.
No matter how many troops the Kremlin sends to Ukraine, only defeat and death await them here. And the Russian ruler understands this perfectly well, but he doesn't care. And that's not all for today. This was me, Darina Hotsakalo. Even more hellish news in our next episode. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.